The Venus Project. Team Speak Seminar. August 26, 2012.
Okay, yeah, I'll just start on the questions. We'll just go into these questions and you guys can help me out. Can you address the idea that the world may lose its cultural diversity under an RBE? Travel will become boring if everywhere looked essentially the same.
Well, the idea about cultural diversity for anybody that is coming from today's society, we have to really analyze what is cultural diversity today. If we go to some Aboriginal people in Australia or some people in the desert, and we see how their habitat lives and how they live in their habitat, and basically we see this as culturally diverse. But it is the same way as culturally diverse when we see, let's say, the Arab, they're women. In the Venus Project, the cultural diversity will be way more than the cultural diversity that we have today, because of the freedom, the freedom that we'll have. The cultural diversity today, it's not you going around and you're looking at some Venetian bridges or some nice cathedrals or anything else like this. We don't really go in depth about that. We go and visit the cathedral and we take the tourist tour. And as you can imagine, the tourist tour is not that informative. In the future, the idea behind cultural diversity is to have more people expressing themselves and expressing their culture. From this perspective, I think that the cultural diversity would be much more. It wouldn't be the same simply because you can't be the same. You can't have the same landscape, the same towns with the same environment everywhere you go. Nowadays, we don't have access to these things. Like, for example, if we go to China, we don't really have ease of access to something very interesting. We have access to the touristy stuff. But if we want to go in depth and we want to learn about some of their dynasties, then we would find maybe very little information about that, or let's say have very little access. So in the future, the cultural diversity will be more dependent, as far as I can say, not only on, let's say, as it is now, cultures based on countries and history and wars and etc. It will be more of an artistic expression of that particular region.
Yeah, and I would like to add that also. What do you mean going to be boring? It's not going to be boring. People will explore and people will learn, and different areas has a lots of different features. So somewhere will be desert, somewhere will be mountain, somewhere will be ocean and the forest, and it will have lots of different groups and lots of different people who study. They'll be generalists, but they will focus on certain aspects of the environment, so you can exchange and learn new things, and that will be a lot more diverse than actually it's right now. Right now it's more uniform. For example, you cannot travel anywhere without money. So you basically, when you go through certain procedures, which everywhere pretty much the same. You have diversity in folkways and food and maybe architecture, but this is insane diversity. We're looking for more sane diversity in that sense, that it will be enhancing your life when you travel.
Yep, and I'd like to go at it from a different angle, and that is, what is the reason for this question? And it might be the perception that a person sees the cities, or it sees the planning and they might see it as a dictate. And the cities are the same, the buildings are the same, the clothes might be the same, and these things are not true. If you can just put yourself in Jacques' shoes, put yourself on a global perspective and figure out how are you going to feed, house, and educate everybody in the world. How are you going to do it? Well, the first step is maximum efficiency. Maximum efficiency means that you're going to create molds, you're going to do building processes the exact same at phase one, the first set of cities, the first global resource-based economy. Yes, it could be that they would be pretty similar buildings. But at this point, we have to do that, or we would have to plan to do that, or Jacques would have to explain that he's planning to do that in his designs for efficiency purposes only. Once we have a correct measurement of Earth's resources, a correct measurement of what the Earth produces on a yearly or annual basis, then we can make adjustments to that. We could use different colors, we could do this, we could do that, but right now we have no idea what level of sustainability the Earth has for the human population and for all the Earth systems. Therefore, Jacques just defaults back to the most efficient practices. And yes, the most efficient practices are what you see. They are like minimal usage of material, maximum usage of structural integrity and room. So you'll get the perspective or perception, I'm sorry, that everything will be mandated, everything will be the same, but that is not the point. The point is maximum efficiency so we can first take care of everybody on Earth and then we move on from there.
Yeah, that's a good point actually. In some places actually, you would like to have the uniformity, like when you have certain safety devices, you know that's the best safety devices at this point. You would like to have these safety devices all over the world, so you will know that transportation, for example, reliable, or water filtering or something like that.
In the future, who will be butcher? Will we allow machines to kill animals in order to possess meat? Another way to say, who will do work which is unpleasant, but that we can't give to machines?
If you're looking for a food supply, first of all, we can actually replace that. It depends of the moment of time you're talking about. We already have a technologies that there are certain institutes working on that, so you can actually grow meat in laboratory. You don't have to slaughter the animals, and that meat will be a lot better to you than meat which you get right now in the stores, because it will be no antibiotics, no artificial flavoring, and etc. Machine will be, I mean, it's replaced everything what we think about it, how you can get your food, you will not have to go to grocery store. You can go in a restaurant, and in the restaurant you will have the food production right there. So it will be, you don't have to raise animals and slaughter them and transfer food from one place to another. So this is inefficient. Right there in the restaurant, for example, if we're talking about resource-based economy, you will have anything you want produced right there. So something which cannot be produced right there at the restaurant will be delivered, but it will be completely different automated system. So basically you can automate whole food production from the seed to your table. The technologies already exist. I think if you can check on their TVP website under recent technologies there, so you can see the lettuce produced automatically on the factory. So this is completely different perspective on the food production and food delivery. And unpleasant work, what do you mean by unpleasant work? You mean something which certain people would not like to do? You mean repetitive work? If you mean that, the whole point of automation, it's replace people on repetitive tasks, so people can study more, can do creative work, not the repetitive work.
In terms of work, most works probably will be done by machine. But if people change their values, the works will not be like boring. Because, for example, on the news the other day, they built in China a hotel in 6 days, a huge hotel. And it was done like in 6 days, the full hotel. People, if they work in community, most of the works will not be boring, because it will be like, for example, you can be doing the work with another values, like everybody sharing the work, and you can even do the work by singing. It's a completely change of a reality like we have today. Now, on the part of the food, to be efficient on food, you can eat anything on the world, but to be very efficient and good quality, the food that the world has in Earth is natural, is the best food, is the food that you have from the ground and the trees, because there is food on nature. If you look at it on nature, you see food all around. It's not needed to like be killing animals, cows, chickens, whatever animal it is. There is one thing too. We don't know how it's going to be, but we know that it's possible too of making some substances on the lab, like Stan was just saying. You can build those substances on the lab. But if people just eat by the trees and by the land, it's more than enough. The part of the lab, probably we would not need that. We would just need that probably for medications, special things. Because if we look, it's just planting the ground and things grow. And there is lots of vegetables, lots of fruits, there is lots of things. All the animals, if you leave animals on the forest, they eat by the ground and they eat by the trees. Why would we have like problems? If we can plant, why would we have problems with food? The problems, they do not exist. It's just a thing that people see because in society things are blocked. I'm gonna finish the answer because it would, I can go along with the topic.
Yeah, and as time goes by, I was just looking up some things, and it looks like I found a recommendation of, and what I'm talking about is vegetables to meat ratios, trying to find consumption levels and averages throughout the world. And what it says here is 25% meat, 75% vegetables. For argument's sake, take that as a worldwide average, okay? Right now, that's what it is, 25%, 75%. As time goes by, as people have education, as human practices become better, that ratio should become less and less because we're now very quickly learning that there are many different ways to get proteins out of vegetables, much more efficient agricultural practices, and much more humane ways to grow food for ourselves. And as education increases, maybe that ratio becomes 90% vegetables, 10% meat throughout the world. And as time goes by, it becomes more and more. And maybe eventually we can supplement that 10% or even down to 5% of meat that humans want and or need, theoretically, by creating the fake meats in labs. And that's something that Jacques talks about.
Because like fake food is not very good food too. Everything that's fake. What I mean that it is like produced, because the best producer of food is nature. And after that comes man, labs, anything. I'm not saying that in the future people won't use this or that lab, but food that comes from nature is the best thing that you can have to eat if it is like in a natural state.
I could just say for myself, as my education and awareness has grown, I have reduced my meat intake and very much increased my fruits and vegetables intake. So it seems to be that's not too. It seems that that could be a really good trend for the entire world.
I'm gonna say one quick thing too. I haven't traveled a lot, but one time I went to Brazil, and when I was there, I was just like eating fruits. And since the fruits there are tropical and they have lots of sun on them, the foods are super powerful. I was only on the country like eating fruit and milkshakes, and I didn't had any hungry. When I was in my country, I would probably eat like meat and other stuff, and I didn't feel fulfilled. And on that country, just with fruits and milkshakes, I was perfectly fine.
This whole conversation moves into the next question. The question is, will there be slaughterhouses in the future, like in today's primitive society, or will it be a truly civilized civilization? And that's exactly what we were just talking about. And I think most of us here, if not all of us here, hope that there will not be, and I theorize that the trends lead to, if you add education and time and humans, that the trends lead to slaughterhouses and those types of things being phased out over time.
To this question, if I can answer something, I would say it's totally unneeded to have slaughterhouses like killing. Like in many countries have, like in Syria, Afghanistan, they don't need like to do all those wars and killing and bombing. It's not needed.
All right. Does anybody else have anything else on slaughterhouses and or the other topic?
Just to basically try to give some kind of a tool for anybody to kind of try to answer themselves such questions when it comes to automation, because when it comes to slaughterhouses, one has to remember that, we're talking about automation. The reason why we have slaughterhouses now is pretty much like that. If we start, or even automated slaughterhouses, the same thing. If we look at a farm that has, let's say, 20 cows, 100 chickens, and whichever other animals there are there, With 20 cows, one family of maybe, 5 people, man and a woman, 3 children, basically they can handle that. But once this is not enough, meaning that, you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cows, okay, you need an automated method to control them, in order to feed them, in order to kill them. It's pretty much like that. So when we're talking about automated slaughterhouses, I don't think that would actually exist in the future. What maybe we would have for people that want to eat meat, and that is very important actually, because everybody's asking that. The vegetarians are pressing for the meat, against the meat, and then the meat-eating people are pressing for the meat. So it's not what it will be. It's very easy actually to understand, and that is you will have the choice between one and the two. But yet again, you will have the information. Sean is a good example. He started reading more stuff, and then he started eating less meat. I'm also the same pretty much. I used to be entirely meat. Now I'm, a lot more vegetarian, a lot more fruit. So with this perspective, maybe we would have, let's say, automated plants that would grow the meat. But when we're talking about killing of the animals, that is something which will be stopped at a very early stage, because that's one of the things which kind of like change people. Like, for example, I know a lot of people, a lot of farmer boys, their parents are farmers, and they have killed animals with their own hands. And when we're talking about hunters even, I used to be a hunter myself. And when you talk to people and when you say basically animals are also living creatures, then they don't really understand that. They see it entirely from their point of view, and they say, oh yeah, I just can't wait until Christmas comes, because then I'll be able to slaughter this and this and the other. And it's actually an exciting thing for them. So at early stage, most probably this would stop simply because we would not need McDonald's. And however funny that sounds, actually it's one of the major change that utilizes those horrible resources and horrible practices. So yeah, I think growing meat would be much more, let's say, human, I would say, like that.
There are a lot of alternatives on food. People, most of the times, they just don't know it, because most of the fields are just like planting potatoes. You could have like carrots and lots of things, but they are just like planting like 2, 3 stuff, because there are innumerous things that could be planted. Innumerous. There are lots and lots of species of things. And there are alternatives to things that you eat that are natural, and you eat them and they taste just like meat. And there are lots of things that you taste and they look like meat, but they aren't.
There are arachis, legumes, beans, and so on, containing a lot of proteins. We can create a vegetarian diet that provides all the necessities.
If people want to have like a healthy life and a good level of energy, if they change their eating habits, they're gonna gain it a lot. Cutting a lot on the meats and processed foods and those McDonald's food that most of people eat, they're gonna change a lot, and they're gonna start to feel better and without having much diseases too.
So it came to a conclusion that we will not going to have slaughterhouses.
Yeah, just a real quick thing, like the way I term it, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I like to point out that nothing will be banned, nothing will be prevented, nothing will be stopped. The terms that we try to employ and really should work is like things will just eventually, if it's irrelevant, it will be viewed as irrelevant and not used by the public, and it won't be mandated, it will just become irrelevant over time. And that is a lot of our current practices, and a lot of our current everything will eventually become irrelevant. We will not focus and stop something. These are wrong terms. They're like kind of warlike terms, and in my opinion, I think we should not use them. Not that anybody was. I just wanted to make that point. Okay, I'll move on to the next one. Would it be possible for us all to pool our resources to update one of your buildings in Florida to include as many of the technologies in the Venus Project plans as possible? Example, the ability to speak to your house requesting it to call your friend in India.
I think that's a good idea.
it would be more geared towards, Jacques and Roxanne to answer that one. I mean, I would just be giving some kind of flailing opinion of it.
Well, it's probably the reason why they didn't do lots of things like that on their houses. They're looking for something to implement the steps we're looking for. So if somebody would like to share the research.
I think you got cut off.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, we're looking for major motion picture as a tool to get people around the world know what's they missing in the future, what the Venus Project is about. So if you would like to donate the resources, it will be a good idea to do it for the motion picture.
It would be something, if you feel strongly of it, I would email Roxanne directly and get a pretty good answer from her. What I've heard when similar questions are asked of her this, she generally redirects people to work with us, follow along with aims and proposals, and the thing we're focused on now is to do what needs to be done to get the script written and then the movie. So that's exactly what Stan just said. So it's likely Roxanne would point you directly towards that. But it could spur something and her and Jacques and say, wow, it is a good idea. We do like to demonstrate. They do tours every single week, and it's really effective for people to come there and see something and touch something tangible. And if there was some sort of fundraising and funds done to update one of the buildings to be modern so that it is even more effective, the technologies that they are showing there, that might be a good idea. She might like it, and she might not redirect you to just working towards a movie. So I would just recommend emailing her at meadows@thevenusproject.com. All right, I'll move to the next one. It has to be pointed out clearly, do we, in TVP, want to collaborate even with people who works on Linux, or do we not want that?
When it comes to this question, I would like to read it again. It has to be pointed out clearly. Do we on TVP want to collaborate even with people who works on Linux, or do we not want that? The only reason why I want to take this one is actually to say that I have no answer, simply because the question is so broad. It's basically like saying, do we collaborate with people that wear their hats backwards or not? The question has no information in there. It has to be more to that. But more important is actually collaborate on what? And not only that, what is the proposition? This is the most important thing when anybody is asking any kind of question. Before you basically say, shall we collaborate with some people, shall we work with them? Or even just if anybody is saying, okay, you know what, let's try something. Form the question, not the question, but the task entirely around what you're proposing. And just randomly saying, can you specify a little bit more?
The reason I ask it, I use Linux and I'm very happy about it. I don't have money to have Windows. Besides, I believe it's not a bad idea to support Linux, and all the people are working right now, not in the future, right now are working for the community without a lot of money like Microsoft and Apple are doing. I think it's a good idea to support Linux and all the open source. And that's my question is clear. Do we have a problem with Linux or what?
I'm going to pull this question to another side, just because you guys sometimes do not see some things. On the internet, there are teams that they work, like Internet Engineering Task Force, and those ones that do the RFCs. They do the standards that run on the internet. Nobody has no problem on using that, and everybody, for example, now is using that. Linux is based mainly on foundations and open source. Open source doesn't mean that it's free. It means that you can use the code. The code is open, because there are some Linux distributions that you have to pay them. For example, Red Hat and SUSE, and you have licenses. But for the Venus project would be very useful if we adopt the use that, for example, Linux has, because the source code is open. It doesn't mean that it has to be like free. It can be paid. And the Venus project could use several licenses. You can have patents, you can have Creative Commons licenses. There are many types of licenses. Sometimes you have to use some, sometimes you can combine, but in the general, would be very good for the Venus project to adopt a principle of community and developing the codes. I don't see any problem on joining some parts of the Linux, collaborating with them, because they already do free software and they do lots of, like for example, GNU, they do a lot of software. There is no problem on collaborating with them, and that it doesn't mean that we have to do everything that they do. But since they use a principle that is like open source, the code is there. So after that, anything is possible.
Wait a second, I don't really understand. This is the question about open source, or why it's Linux segregated?
I was hoping to answer it as
I was
well,
giving
but
a
there's
general
some
answer.
eager people. I was hoping to answer that as well, but I guess there's some eager people about that. Now, the question is general, the answers are general, but this is what I was asking Val from the beginning. I really wanted to have a conversation with him because the question is very open. Why are you asking this question? What has made you think that TVP has problem with Linux?
I don't think has a problem, but it has to be put it down clearly. Do you want to work with the people are using Linux, or we don't care about them? Just a simple question. If we do care about those people, then we have to look for application, for apps, which are supporting eventually both the mainstream open source operating system like Windows and Mac, and open source. I know it's difficult that, but what do you say? What we should do? There are a lot of people are supporting, and I already said I'm using Linux, and I think it's a very good idea, and I support this idea just by using it.
Okay, so you're saying that when you use Linux, you would like other people use Linux as well, so it will be convenient for you?
Well, I didn't say that, but of course it will be great. I just say that here on TVP we have to look for application like this, what is it called? Sorry, the application you proposed today. There has to be some application which are supporting both operating systems.
Can you develop this application?
Oh, that would be great if I can. I cannot, but the question is...
So until we have this application or something like that, I don't see actually how it's related to what we're talking about here.
Well, it's
This is not a question
perception,
of open source or anything. This is a question of principles, because we are
Just
now
a
on the
second,
internet, we are using TCP, we are using
please,
HTTP,
can Val
and those
answer the
protocols
question, please?
are developed by communities.
Yeah, can Val answer the question, please? Can you please explain how you see that related to what we're talking about here?
I put it out simple. I am using Linux. I know I'm not alone. I want to participate to the Venus project, and I see that I cannot. I cannot open that application.
Yeah, it was just a reactionary thing to today. And let me just give you an overview, Val, and that is, well, first I'll give you my opinion. I think we all should be using something like Linux, but the reality is we're not. The reality is the Venus project themselves are using Macs. They all have Macs. Roxanne now knows how to use Macs. She used PCs a long time ago. Joel and Roxanne use them all the time, and they're proficient in Macs. Andrew, who does the 3D and a lot of web design, he uses a PC. I personally use a PC, and I'm trying to train myself on Linux, and It's Linux Mint and these. I don't really like Ubuntu, but some people do. Anyways, there's the ideal and then there's the reality. The reality is we can't make people change. I can only like hope that they will start to use more open source and less proprietary stuff. And I do officially, I do apologize for today. Had no idea that it would not work on Linux. And again, I knew that there would be some pains, but I did not realize that one. What we do need is a group of people, a team that's really developing these tools. We need tools dedicated to what we need here, and it's collaboration software, it's voice over IP software, and the best that we have found so far, and it's obvious because this is what we're using, is TeamSpeak, Skype, and then I also recommend something called Google Docs, because it's all web-based. We're just trying to use the best free software we can get a hold of, and until we have a team that's really developing specific things for our needs. Because we are very constrained by time, definitely money, and definitely expertise and resources and people able to do these things.
Yeah, let's not mix what we do here with the Venus project, because this activism, and we're trying to do different things, try to see how it works. It's not the Venus project against Linux or something like that.
If we're able to start at a foundation wise, I think we'd all be on one foundational platform and be able to collaborate much easier. But the starting point of people is where they're at, and if somebody has a PC in their hand and they're just good at the internet and they're not very good at programming and understanding complex things, or something just new, which is what Linux can be. In an ideal situation, we would all be speaking the same language. The primary focus of this is communication. This is the key term we're really talking about. Communication and then collaboration. What is the maximum efficiency of this? Well, this is communication is we're all speaking the same exact language. And many people have brought up that we should start speaking the same language, whether it be one of those new languages, I can't remember the key word to it now, but the default one seems to be English, but that still prevents people from communicating. And the collaboration is tools that we have here online, and we're just using what we have, and like I did today, we're trying to test new ones, and if you can find one or make one, oh, it'd be fantastic.
By what I know and by what I see, the Venus project doesn't have any team that does development of software like does Linux, or it ain't any force like the people that on the internet develop protocols and standards and ISO's definitions. The Venus project has teams to do the Venus project things and Venus project software, but we do not adopt those principles like open source, and we are not adopting that. This is what happens. And I can understand people suggesting like, but why don't we use Linux? Why don't we use this? Why don't we use that?
For me, it's quite funny. It's funny that a platform which wants to be universal platform or web platform or web-based platform, only Windows and what was that? Google, Android, and I don't know it, Mac supporting. I believe a universal platform has to be a universal platform, so you don't have to lock it to some operating systems. So that's, for me, it's just curious, funny, isn't it? For you too.
Oh yeah, I'm severely disappointed in the GoToWebinar today, and I don't know if you knew, it's $100 a month. So
Wow.
This is expensive. I got it for free, and because I'm abusing trial systems, but if you're paying that much money, it should be very, very open to everybody. So I would probably guesstimate we will not be using that well into the future. We'll just keep looking.
Running on Java and it's paid and things are a bit close, so the performance cannot be too high.
Okay, why does TVP not adapt to a peer-to-peer organizational form where there are no titles but rather people who have information and knowledge to use? Hierarchies are militaristic to form control, stifling innovation and creativity. Why does TVP use this? And I will not speak for a little bit and give you guys opportunity.
Can you please point out where you see the Venus Project use their hierarchic militaristic approach? Because as far as I see, I didn't notice that. It's not hierarchical system. The Venus Project, it's a system. It is transition which allows us to get to the resource-based economy. It's not like hierarchical or dictatorial system in the sense that you will be deprived of your rights or your freedoms or whatever you think about it. This is procedures which works and carried out by professionals. This is I will not say that this is militaristic or hierarchical in the sense that we have now, but if you can point out, please.
He wrote in the chat,
Please.
all pseudo-intellectuals are in positions of control where they have little to no knowledge of a given subject. And that just makes me think that he's had direct bad experience, and so that's something we need to address.
Well, is it probably, if it's an issue of a direct bad experience, it's probably an opinion. So how we can deal with it with opinion like that, I don't see it.
From what I've seen so far, it is those who basically step up and do something who then become that authority in that area. And then apparently they stay that authority in that area, and hopefully other people help them out. And then when a new person comes in and sees that, they might perceive that as a position of hierarchy. But generally, we have so few people doing things that you'll see a few people in positions where people are either asking them questions or doing what they think that person should do, so.
I don't think there is any possibility for people actually to step up and try to help with something that isn't their field, and then to try and formulate such a thesis. I would love to see that. I would love to see people saying, yeah, this field is not my expertise. So what I need to do is actually learn a lot about it and then come and help, because at the moment I haven't seen people like that.
It's true. If you're a doctor, you probably don't know nothing about physics or computing or anything else. So it's totally true that.
Well, I would propose actually that we go on with the questions, because for anybody who is new here, Nick and Eric, they have always been very kind to us with respect to keeping one subject on, most probably for the rest of their life. So I'd much rather we questions, and then when we finish them, maybe we'll go back to the subject.
I know a lot of people are criticizing that, especially that where people are coming from the Zeitgeist movement. I propose that all those people are criticizing the fact that we try to organize here on the Venus Project around Jacques Fresco and Roxanne Meadows is not because we see them as king, it's just because they have the knowledge. So nobody has to obey or something like that. And something else I want to propose those people. Why don't you bring that wonder tool or peer-to-peer? Just bring it here and we will use it. But as far as I know, except Anonymous, it's very interesting issue, Anonymous. If somebody has what is going on Anonymous, I'm very curious to know about it, because I heard a lot of things and I read a lot of things about Anonymous, but I cannot imagine how people are working there. It's very interesting, I must say it. For me, it's very, very interesting. That's what I say. Please come here with that tool, with that wonder tool, and who knows, maybe we'll use it.
All right, we got one last question, unless I'm not looking at the right thing. And it's who decides which procedure is better? Can't we just use a really blatant example of what just happened today? Yeah, I might have said, you know what, screw this, let's go back to TeamSpeak, but I didn't hear any complaints, and I'm still not hearing any complaints. So you can say, oh my God, Sean's being a dictator, but come on, you know, that's a really bad perception of that. So we're back to TeamSpeak for right now, and that's not me dictating to you. That is just us doing what is being done.
It's not who that decides which procedure is better, it's what. And what we use is based on what works and what doesn't work. And if we use that example that Sean gave, we tried that GoToWebinar and it didn't work. So that fact that it didn't work well decided, or rather determined, that for now at least we are not going to use that.
All right, he wrote in chat that he was referring to the video when Jack was speaking about procedure. And unfortunately, when I changed my audio, I was unable to hear it. So if somebody else could address that.
As far as I understand, in the resource-based economy, nobody decides which procedure is better. Certain procedures regarding the specific subjects is developed and they tested, and which procedure work better will be adopted. That's it. It's no decision making. It's a trial and error process.
Yeah, I remember something from the video when I watched it earlier, and it was Jacques talking about procedures, and he said the procedure for an eye exam is what it is. And through trial and error, which has happened to this point, doctors have refined what is more effective and what is not. And it's not like one doctor just decided it or not. They just found it and generally over time arrived at a generalized procedure that works.
There's a great talk about methods through which we can evaluate certain proposals and come to a decision. The scientific method is definitely one that we can go for, but there are many people who say, yeah, but what about things that cannot be put through the scientific method? Say they're very, very close. I'm talking about 99% of the times of those things. They're very close to the value of those people. So if something cannot be put through the scientific method, I'm saying something because most things can, even relationships between people. But if there's something which cannot be put through the scientific method, we should always try to look back and say, is it something connected with our values? Because actually, for things that we talked in the beginning of this session, we're talking about, are there going to be slaughterhouses? Will there be killing of animals? And the same goes for artificially produced meat. If somebody says, I don't really want to eat this meat, but yet again, I don't want to kill animals, how would the scientific method be used for that? Well, it cannot be. The simple answer is it cannot be. The simple answer is it's a matter of values. So you need to adopt something new as eating raw meat. If you're that attached to eating meat, if you're not, then it would be a problem to you. But you can't have two things at once, where one is so basically, if you have something that is in contrast with your values, but yet again you want to reach the optimal decision, you can't have that. You really need to, as soon as there's something, as I say, as soon as there's something like a thorn in your eye, look back and say, is this practical? Is this totally impractical? Or is it actually in connection with my values at this point in time?
Let's cut the meeting, and we'll be back here next week with or without Jack and Roxanne. We will be here with Joel, and probably back to the original format. And throughout this week, maybe we'll be able to test a couple other things out. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next week.